Welcome back to WD.
FM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. We're your hosts, Brie Bertolacini, Marketing Manager.
And Chris Mullen, Marketing and Editorial Specialist at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Season's greetings, Chris, and happy December. Now, happy holidays, everybody. I celebrate Christmas, and if you're watching the video podcast, you'll see that I am a big decorator. I love decorating for the holidays, and I was one of those people who decorated in very early November to really extend the Christmas spirit. Chris, I like your little twinkly lights there. You have some Christmas spirit going on yourself.
Thank you. Yes, these actually I keep up all year round, so I keep the Christmas spirit with me all the days. I have a very sad looking tree to my right that I still actually have to decorate, so I won't be showing everybody this. But you can use your imagination that branches are everywhere, nary a light or ornament to be found. But my real decoration right now, for folks on the video podcast, I'm wearing a pin of Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh,
One
the
of my
best Christmas carol.
one of my favorite holiday traditions. I'm up to 4 watches so far this holiday season, and I mean, I'm disappointed in myself. It should be higher. I got to pump those numbers up. But yes, very, very, very much love Muppet Christmas Carol, and as voted on by the Dickens Museum, the staff's favorite adaptation of the classic tale. So you can't go wrong with going with the experts.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you can't argue with that. And I remember a couple of years back, as like a staff celebration, the Walt Disney Family Museum staff hosted a Christmas Carol watching with a commentary by the one and only Dave Goelz, who performs as famously Gonzo, as well as many other Muppet characters. But just knowing all those little details, I think one year we did Emmett
Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Yes, I always get the name wrong, but I love Emmett Otter.
It's also just so wild how they do the boat, like how they float along the river, and you're like, how could they do that? Well, of course, because they're real, so that's how they can do it.
Yes, Jim Henson Christmas movies are chef's kiss.
Well, as you know, I also celebrate Christmas, and this holiday season is a very special one because Christmas with Walt Disney, directed by award-winning Disney legend Don Hahn, and previously only viewable during the holidays at the Walt Disney Family Museum, is now available to stream on Disney+. The movie is part of this year's Disney Plus Happy Holidays collection, which allows fans to watch beloved seasonal classics together with new favorites. I watched it this year and wanted to chat about some of our favorite holiday moments from the film. So, Brie, what are your favorite moments from Christmas with Walt Disney?
Yeah, Christmas with Walt Disney is one of my favorite Disney documentaries, hands down, combines everything that I love, anything about Walt Disney's kind of personal life and how he celebrated Christmas. And I'm a big Christmas fan. So this is just very ideal for me. Walt's daughter and museum co-founder Diane Disney Miller narrates over Disney family home movies where she shares her Christmas memories alongside so many holiday segments and vintage Disneyland footage. I just love being brought into those special Disney family memories. And I think one of my favorite parts is seeing Disney family home films and just kind of Diane sharing her favorite kind of Christmas memories, some of the gifts that she received. I just always enjoy kind of getting to know that more personal side of Walt and what he did for his family and what made those holidays special. I particularly love the footage of Diane and Sharon kind of exploring their little cottage that Santa left them on Christmas that was looked very similar to like a Snow White's cottage. This was around that same time. And of course, I just love seeing how Disneyland celebrated Christmas in those early years and kind of seeing how there was just a focus on how other cultures celebrate Christmas and in the Christmas parade and how some traditions still haven't changed since with the candlelight processional and how, Walt started that. And that's a tradition that Disneyland still does today. So what about you? What are some of your favorite moments, Chris?
I'm so bummed that I missed Brendan Fraser leading the candlelight processional at Epcot, but I'll get over that.
Yep.
I should pick the footage of Walt on his famous skis, which is a favorite of mine in the galleries every time I walk by it. But my favorite part of Christmas with Walt Disney is a cross between the great old school commercials for Johnson & Johnson and Coca-Cola and the segments from 1 Hour in Wonderland. I really want to see that in its entirety someday, especially the Firehouse 5+2 musical number, and Walt claiming his miniature train was a gift from Santa, quote, the result of being a good boy for 30 years.
That part I love so much because it's just like the melding, how he just was bringing in things that he was doing in his personal life. And he's like, how can we use this in the work that I'm doing?
And it showed his kind of personal ethos of like, I think this is really cool. So I think a lot of other people would think it would be really cool too to see.
What's that famous quote that Walt had? I think everybody loves trains. Is that it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that in that article that he wrote. Yeah.
Yeah, just like I like trains. Everybody else must like trains, which convinced me that I liked trains actually. Like that exhibition of Walt's trains where that quote was featured, and I gained a really great appreciation of trains after spending so much time in that exhibition so many years
Well,
ago.
Walt was a salesman. Even now, more than 50 years after his passing, he could convince anyone to like trains.
Exactly. And, I'm sure it really convinced a lot of people in the 1 hour in Wonderland, maybe some young boys and girls to be good boys and girls, and maybe Santa would bring them model trains that year for Christmas too.
Yeah, probably not bigger than his, but that would be a tough thing to top.
Yes, definitely. Well, let us know if you've had the chance to watch Christmas with Walt Disney and what your favorite part of the film is. Now, time for some museum updates. December's film of the month is the 1995's Toy Story. Join us for a special month-long screening of Disney and Pixar's first feature-length collaboration, the beloved and acclaimed movie that revolutionized the making of animated films. Visit our calendar on our website to get more information on screenings.
This year, we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. We are showcasing rare and unique objects from the museum's collection that highlight important milestones in Walt's career and his company's early history. Debuting in October, we displayed the letter from Walt to Mrs. T.J. Davis, Virginia Davis's mother, his early star in the Alice comedies, that he sent on the day of the founding of what we know today as the Walt Disney Company. We had our first rotation of that, and the newest object on display is Margaret Carey's Tinkerbell slippers. Actress and dancer Margaret Carey wore this particular pair of ballet slippers while performing as the live-action reference model for the character of Tinkerbell in Peter Pan. Since the making of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, Disney studio artists would use live-action references to capture lifelike movements. Filming human actors, sometimes with costumes and props, and in Tinkerbell's case, outsized costumes and props, allowed animators to study and reproduce the movement of actors' bodies and clothes in animated form. You can see the ballet slippers now until January 2024.
I got the opportunity to interview Margaret Carey about these special slippers she donated to the Walt Disney Family Museum. So here is a clip from that conversation.
When I finished that first day, Mark said, do you have something else that you could wear instead of the tennis shoes? I just said, sure, I could wear ballet shoes. He said, we'd like that. That's the way they asked. I mean, I was dumbstruck. It wasn't just do it. And so I had the two pair of ballet shoes. I had black ones and I had pink ones. And so the next day I was there, I wore the pink ones, and then I'm sure I wore them for about a week, and then I switched over to the black ones. And unfortunately, for us, the photographer that they sent over to take pictures of me that day of what was happening on the shoot, I wore my black ones, but I didn't wear them half as much as I wore the little pink ones. And when I put them away, I think right after that, I was moving. So I took these little ballet shoes and I stuffed them down with the shoes that I was moving with. And I think that they sat there for 70 years. People have claimed that it was Marilyn Monroe, who did all this work. And no, it wasn't. Marilyn could have done it. I mean, she was wonderful. I thought just great. But she wasn't a dancer. And if you look at Tinkerbell, the ballet shoes are perfect because everything I did was a ballet dancer. Even when she got upset, it was like a ballet dancer would do it. With it, everything, all my walk is like a ballet dancer. And that's what makes Tinkerbell stand out from all the other characters that are on there. So how wonderful Mark Davis was to pick this out, because in his office when I did the interview, I did some ballet work for him just on the carpet, you know, the things that so he could see, he caught on that that's what he wanted her to be. And so even to this day, with her hands, she doesn't do what other people do unless she's really excited at something else. But otherwise, it's very graceful even when she's angry. My idea with Tinkerbell was that she was about 9 years old. And as you could see, it changed a little bit as we went through the movie. She got looking a little older than that. But her movements are like a spoiled child. No, I shouldn't say spoiled. A child who wants her way. You know, she thinks that's the best way to go. So that's what I thought of her all the way through. And when she gets upset, she got upset like a 9-year-old. That was it. That's the way it was supposed to happen. And when she was in the hat, in Peter Pan's hat, after in the nursery scene where he had caught her and used her pixie dust to sprinkle the children so they could fly, and she was as upset as any 9-year-old could be. That's all there was to it. So it was a different flavor that we started out with, and of course it's changed a great deal today. And when I did the scene of looking at the mirror and then climbing on the mirror, and he told me what it was supposed to be, I felt that she had never seen a mirror before. Why would there be a mirror in Neverland? So it was all, oh, is that what I look like? It was not, oh, how gorgeous I am. It was, surprise, oh, that, wait a minute. Measuring the hips, like a 9-year-old, and walking off. So that's why they had us do that kind of thing, and I was cast in the role. I don't know, it took them years to make the movie. So what if they started out with Tinkerbell looking like this, and by the time at the end of the movie they had other artists working on, and she looked like that, you know, although you would know it was Tinkerbell. So they filmed us, and that's what they were doing then. They wouldn't do that today, but they filmed that before because they didn't have electronics or computers or any of those things. And then with a regular camera, and then Mark Davis, the great man who designed Tinkerbell, and you can, all of the things that she has done and been to people, it's because of Mark Davis. And the sweetest man that you ever met. Just a dear. I don't know about his other artists that work with him. He may not think so. I don't know. But he was just a dear. And so the idea was they would sketch out what they wanted me to do. They would bring in props and tell me that I was doing this and I was doing that, whatever it was. And I would step out, and the first time that I ever stepped out in front of the camera, I said to him, Mr. Davis, that's how long ago it was, you call people Mr. and Mrs. Anyway, he said, what? I said, what do you want Tinkerbell to be? Do you want her to be ditzy like Betty Boop? Or do you want her to be a know-it-all like Queen of the Fairies? He said, Margaret, we want her to be you. And I said, golly gee, I think I can do that. So I stepped out, and he gave me carte blanche to be Tinkerbell, and he liked what he saw. So we would work it out. We would rehearse it once, see I hit the marks where we were supposed to go. And then he would say, well, we're ready. Everybody else ready. There's a big crew there of about 12, I guess. And it started in the very beginning, and they'd say, roll it, and away. And I didn't have to match any voice because Tinkerbell did not talk in that movie. Everything was pantomime, You know how she felt about things. And so then I would work through and do the scene, and he'd turn around and say, "Everybody happy with that? Everybody got it? I liked it, Margaret. Let's do one more for protection." So I'd go and do the scene again, and then we would move on.
Did Walt ever stop by while you were filming?
Well, the first time, Walt Disney and the whole group came in. About, I would say there were 12 people with him, all with notebooks of what they were going to do. And this lone man comes over to see Mark Davis and see what was going on. And it turned out to be Walt Disney. I was dumbstruck because all I could think of, he's the head of the studio. And I'm standing there with my cover up, very important for me. And he was nice and kind and chatted, and he liked what he was seeing going on, perfectly obvious. He was much more slim than I thought he would be. And I thought, I've just seen a head of the studio. I didn't know quite what to do with that. So it happened again, and by that time the word had gotten around that I was going to school with his daughters. I was going to a girls' school because I could get a permit to get out and work in the movies. And you couldn't do that in the public school, very difficult. So Sharon and Diane were at my school, and evidently somebody had told him this. I don't know why it should happen. But it was either the second time or the third time. I'm still dumbstruck. I didn't know what to say. I really did. Standing there, and he turned around and he says, "It's so nice to see you," or, one of the greetings. He said, "I understand that you go to school with my daughters." Well, then I was really dumbstruck. And I said yes, and stopped. I mean, I nothing to go on with. And he stepped away, and he looked back at me, and something like, he said, "I'm sure they liked you," like this. And we waved goodbye.
To kind of take it back from the very beginning, kind of what was your dance experience before working with Disney, and kind of your early career like?
One of the most exciting things happened to me as a 4-year-old. See, I had been adopted just a few months before, and it was a whole new world for me, and my mother took me over to a fellow named Willie Covan, who is famous in Hollywood, one of the greatest tap teachers that they ever had. And you might be interested because Bobby Burgess and I talk about him because we both had him as a teacher, and he taught all the greats. But I was so insecure, as you can imagine, as a 4-year-old. I had no idea what they were talking about. I'd never heard of show business before from that angle. And so I would go over and take the tap lessons, and I knew I wasn't doing very well. I just knew I wasn't. But every time that we would leave, Mr. Covan would stop and say to my parents, "Mr. and Mrs. Robb, your daughter is a dancing fool," with the biggest smile, and I knew I could do it. I can't think of a better way to live if you love show business, if you love to entertain people. And I just seem to have that born in me, that to entertain people. I'm still going. I'm 94 years old. I meet people, I entertain them, I tell them stories of what. It makes me so happy. It makes me alive. And all I can say, it gives me faith and trust and a whole bunch of pixie dust.
That was such a good clip. Margaret Carey is just the sweetest.
She just knows how to tell a good story. Like, I feel like she just has that Hollywood glamour and sparkle to her storytelling, which I just love.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this holiday season, consider shopping at the Walt Disney Family Museum when giving gifts to your Disney history-loving people in your life. We have some great selections in our store. My favorite this year is our exclusive Disney Cats and Dogs Special Exhibition sweatshirts. You can't go wrong with any of those colors. My favorite color is teal, so the mint sweatshirt is right up my alley.
Such a good gift to give this holiday season. One thing that I picked up a few years back that you can still shop in the store was I gifted my dad one of the museum's e-ticket shirts. They're nice, kind of green. He wears it all the time. And every time I go to Disneyland, I always see someone sporting that one. So I'm like, you visited the Walt Disney Family Museum. So that's kind of a deep cut. But I think it makes such a wonderful gift if you're
Yeah.
into kind of Disneyland nostalgia.
Well, and it shows that the person who's wearing it is very rare and is usually the first ticket that everyone wants to use when they get to Disneyland. So it's not just a very cool kind of inside Disney reference, but it also shows them that you really do value them, like the e-ticket in your ticket book.
Oh, there we go. Well, another great gift this year is to give a year of magic with a gift membership to the Walt Disney Family Museum. Now, with a gift membership, you enjoy complimentary admission to the museum and our special exhibitions for a member and a guest, plus discounts, member only events, and exclusive digital content on our member portal. So, lots to enjoy all year round. Learn more at waltdisney.org/join.
And a very recent example of something that is a member exclusive, Brie was talking about exclusive digital content. We just had a virtual talk on poster art of the Disney parks, and that is up on the member portal now for anybody who either didn't get to join for that particular talk or wants to see it again to share the magic of that particular book chronicling the art behind some of our favorite Disneyland attraction posters. So when you become a member, some of our past virtual programs become available to you instantly alongside some of our old member magazine issues in digital form as well. So definitely a lot of cool stuff for you to check out. Also, don't miss our animal antics on display this holiday season. Visit us and experience our special exhibitions currently on view, Disney Cats and Dogs and Possibilities Unleashed, a pet portrait exhibition.
Now, before we get to our collections clash, we wanted to look back on this wonderful year. Thank you all so much, you, the listener, for tuning in and voting each month on your favorite objects, mostly voting for Chris's objects, but we'll get into the nitty gritty on that. But here's a quick recap of last month, November's collections clash. The category was Walt's Travels. The first round was between my pick of Mary Blair's It's a Small World concept art that received 77% of the votes, and Chris's pick of Walt's travels to France during World War I with some photos from his travels that received 23% of the votes.
Once again, our audience is not going for the patriotism, which is a surprising development. The second round was between my pick of a travel brochure signifying Walt's travels to the Golden Gate International Exposition, right in our own backyard, that received 63% of the votes, and Bree's pick of Walt's travels to South America with El Grupo with passport applications that received 37% of the vote.
For the last round, it was between my pick of Walt's film canisters documenting his travels that received 64% of the votes, and Chris's pick of a Walt Disney World travel brochure signifying his travels to Florida that received 36% of the votes.
Well, congrats, Bree, on your win, second one in a row.
Yay. Thank you, Chris. Well, before we get to December's collections clash, we wanted to do kind of an end of year recap. This year, Chris and I talked about 66 objects featured in the Walt Disney Family Museum collection.
There was one big landslide win this year, and that was between Bree's pick of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs Academy Award and my pick of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The Oscar won by a landslide with 86%. And leaving the Presidential Medal of Freedom with only 14% of the votes.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom was one of the objects that was played twice this year, each by both of us, and it lost both times. So that was the big loser of this year, was the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Wah, wah.
Our listeners hate America. You heard it here first.
No.
The Lily Bell was the only other object used twice this year by both of us, and it brought us both a victory.
Yay. So Lily Bell, big winner. Presidential Medal of Freedom, big loser. So we know next year, maybe some objects to avoid, or at least one. Now, 2 rounds tied for the closest margin of any of our collections clashes, and they happen to be in the same episode. So the first was between my pick of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea underwater camera that received 47%, and Chris's pick of the Circarama camera that narrowly won the round with 53%. Now, the next round was flipped exactly, but with the numbers. So it was between my pick of the Bell and Howell camera that received 53% and Chris's pick of the Technicolor camera that received 47%. So just kind of weird how that happened, but we each got a win out of those close calls.
Yeah, dead heat. And it shows that, it really can come down to the percentages. So if some of you listening have listened and not voted, your vote can be the one that makes a difference.
Definitely.
We clashed through 33 rounds, and you had 15 individual wins, and I had 18 individual wins. A lot closer than it might have seemed.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually really surprised by that because I was like, oh, Chris won so many times this year. But breaking it down that way, I was like, oh, okay. It was closer than I thought. And overall, in the last 11 months, you won 7 months with a 5-month streak, which I bitterly noted in the moment during those 5 months. Didn't go unnoticed by me. But I did win more months than I thought with 4 total wins. But it isn't all about winning. It's about the objects we learned about along the way. Isn't that right, Chris?
Absolutely. Well, Walt did say that he always aimed for number 2 because at number 1, there's nowhere to go from there. So here's to 2024. Without further ado, let's kick off December's Collections Clash. This month, we're taking it to the artist palette and focusing on one color, red. Going through the museum, you see the beautiful artwork, architecture, and objects that all go into telling Walt's story, and red really stands out. The historic barrack building we're housed in is built in beautiful red brick. Looking out the second floor, you can see the crimson Golden Gate Bridge. Actually, it's International Orange, Brie.
Oh.
Uh,
Wow. It looks red.
Absolutely, you are not wrong for saying that. And walking through the galleries, red pops out on objects in almost every gallery. Brie, since you won last month's Collections Clash, you get to go first.
Well, for my first pick, I'm going with one of the largest red objects we have in our galleries, the Autopia Card that belonged to Walt's grandson, Chris Miller. Sorry, Chris, I know that's probably one you always like to pick.
That's my car, yes.
With a Chris license plate, yes, you can make a pitch. Chris Miller remembered that Autopia was his favorite ride at Disneyland, and at around 8 years old, Walt gifted him this bright red gas-powered Autopia car with his name on the license plate. On weekends, Chris would drive the little red car around Disney Studio backlots. Now, the legendary Disney car designer Bob Gurr got brought on to the Disneyland project in 1954 to consult of the design for these miniature cars. And it was actually with the help of his family friends of the Iwerks family. Now, Bob Gurr was talking to Ub Iwerks, first ever hand of Mickey Mouse and camera extraordinaire for the Disney company. But Ub Iwerks they were both talking about the prototype car that was being worked on for the opening of Disneyland. And Iwerks actually referred Bob for the job. So just definitely a very small world. I mean, I guess Burbank and the LA area isn't as big as we like to believe. Now, Walt was so impressed with Gurr's knowledge and skill, he hired him to stay on with WET Enterprises, today known as Walt Disney Imagineering. With a background in car design, Gurr is most famous for designing more than 100 designs during his 40 years at WED for attractions ranging from Matterhorn bobsleds, Haunted Mansion, Doom buggies, monorails, and more.
Well, that's a great pick, Brie. Well, I won't be going too far away from your pick. My first pick is perhaps 20 feet away from your pick, and you'll need a certain kind of pick to pick it. Yes, I'm vaguely alluding to the mouse guitar on display. There's a Mickey Mouse decal under the plastic strings, done in the style of Mickey's appearance on the Mickey Mouse Club. Mouse guitar is printed in raised letters at the bottom. A gift of museum co-founder Walter Miller to the collection, the plastic red and black guitar faithfully recreated the iconic guitar strummed by beloved head Mouseketeer Jimmy Dodd. In a room full of exciting artifacts and a model of Disneyland to boot, it always catches my eye when I walk by.
I love that so much. I think the whole display of the Mickey Mouse Club merchandise, it always catches my eye because I love how they shoehorned in the name Mouse into almost every product. I love Mouse Guitar. I think there's a Mouska Draw and a Mouska Phone and a Mouska Viking. So many Mouskas. That's just amazing. The Mouse Guitar is the one that I actually can't say without like sing mouse guitar. I don't know.
Well, that's the way they spell it. I mean, they really didn't have to change the spelling of guitar, but they were like, it's already going to be after the word mouse, so it's already going to be kind of silly. So let's just change the spelling of guitar to be a little cuter and probably to help it fit on the guitar too.
Yeah. Well, great pick. Now we're doing the snake style dress. So you've got the next pick.
Well, my second pick is the Roald Dahl Gremlins book. Yes, before Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the BFG, and Matilda made Dahl a household name, Roald Dahl had been a Royal Air Force pilot who at the time was serving in Washington, D.C. as an assistant air attaché to help create a kind of British propaganda to keep America interested and sympathetic to Britain's war efforts. Dahl had written about his RAF experiences, including a story called Gremlin Lore, about the mythical creatures that sabotaged RAF planes. Since he was a serving officer, Dahl was required to submit everything he wrote for approval by British Information Services. The officer who read it, Sidney Bernstein, passed it along to Walt Disney, who was looking for war-related stories to develop as films. Now, Dahl received a cable from Walt communicating that the Gremlins had possibilities, and Walt was interested in securing the story for a project. In November 1942, Dahl was given official consent by the RAF to participate in the development of the picture and granted leave to visit the Burbank studios for 10 days. With somewhat mixed fortune, the book was to be the only lasting portion of the project. Several factors led to the demise of the film project, both the feature-length live-action animation concept and the idea of animated short subjects starring the Gremlins. Because Walt was unable to secure the exclusive rights to the subject of Gremlins, other studios were already distributing Gremlin-based cartoons, and the window of opportunity to capitalize on the character's popularity was thereby shortened. Additionally, the RAF, while agreeing to share revenue with war charities, also retained the copyright to the Gremlins and demanded final script approval. These factors combined to limit the viability of Disney's involvement in the proposed projects, and thus we never got to see a Roald Dahl Gremlins Disney film.
And that is such a bummer. I love the Fifanilla Gremlins the most, but they kind of had another life in the Insignia game during World War II for the Disney studios. So they weren't completely forgotten, which I just love. But great pick. Love that book. It took me a second to even think about where that book is situated in our galleries. And it's such a, bright red, really stands out. Well, for my second pick, I'm going with the Disneyland apartment lamp on display in our awards lobby. This special display includes the original furniture that decorated Walt's apartment that is located above the firehouse on Main Street, USA. Emil Curry, an Academy Award-winning set decorator, was selected to decorate the apartment with a Victorian theme, a favorite era of Walt and Lillian's, replete with accents of the era's famed cranberry glass, something that Lillian Disney loved to collect. Now, this lamp exemplifies the cranberry glass Victorian theme of the apartment. Diane Disney Miller recalled, quote, "Mother and Dad loved the Victorian period. It was the period they grew up in, but our home was not of that style. This was their little Victorian masterpiece," end quote.
Well, that's a great pick, and I can't believe I didn't think of that one, but I was obviously thinking more in the galleries, so the awards lobby escaped me. Well, you have the next pick as well.
So for my last pick, I'm going with the character model cell of the Seven Dwarves that feature the variations of red for the coats of Doc and Grumpy. Now, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs color palette had a more sophisticated look with kind of subdued and subtle tones, very different than what they had previously done in the Silly Symphony shorts. The look of the dwarfs was very calculated. According to Mindy Johnson's book, Ink and Paint, The Woman of Walt Disney's Animation, the dwarves were originally colored with light pink jerseys, but paint supervisor Dot Smith reasoned that a group of men living in the forest would logically sport darker tones. Thank you, Dot Smith. In a studio write-up, it details, quote, "Doc and Grumpy, the two most dominant characters among the dwarves, wear a russet-colored jerkin and a dull magenta one, respectively, in contrast to the gray and tan garments of the others. Now, Doc wears the warm russet shade because he is a cheery individual, while the magenta definitely brands Grumpy as an irritable wet blanket," end quote. But I just love the kind of color theory that these characters are kind of identified in these kind of red and magenta tones.
Well, that's a great pick. I didn't even think about how differently just shades of red can tell you so much about a character. And it's appropriate then that for my final pick, I am also going with animated film artwork, specifically Mary Blair's vivid and striking concept art starring the Queen of Hearts. Now, below a black and red streaked sky is a depiction of the iconic hedge maze lined with countless playing card servants. In front of the cards is a clearly angry Queen of Hearts. The artwork demonstrates Blair's mastery of the two-dimensional space and color theory and highlights just how important and singular her contributions were to the look and feel of Disney animation in the 1940s and 50s. Also, similar to your point about the dwarves' clothes, the use of red in this particular artwork is just so varied, from the sky to the faces and spears of the playing cards to the queen's dress. Maybe my favorite use of the color red in the galleries.
That's such a great pick. I love that. The Queen of Hearts definitely exemplifies that really bold color red in her costumes. And who just can, everybody loves Mary Blair. So that should be next year's poll, is like how many times we use Mary Blair and how many times did that win? I'm assuming all of the times.
The limit does not exist.
Exactly. Well, now it's time for our honorable mentions. These picks will not be up for voting. Now, my first pick is the Time magazine cover of Walt and figurines of the Seven Dwarves for the December 27, 1937 issue. Now, Time magazine is known for that iconic bright red color adorning every issue, still to this day. And the lead article was titled Mouse and Man and showcased Walt's newest film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and served as an editorial piece on Walt's career to that point. Now, one of my favorite paragraphs from the article is as follows. You can read the full thing on Time Magazine's archive site. So, quote, Walt Disney wears the Hollywood uniform, lounge coats, open-throated shirts, fancy sweaters. His thick, dark brown hair, which dips to a widow's peak, slightly less emphatic than Robert Taylor's, has a long top lock, which Disney wraps around his finger while he talks. At a loss for words, he often resorts to pantomime. He works until 6 or 7 o'clock every night. In busy times, works round the clock. He drives his Packard Roadster home to dinner, plays with his baby daughters, Diane Marie and Sharon May, and goes to bed. Hollywood hotspots seldom see him. Weekends, he plays poor but occasionally inspired polo at the Riviera Country Club, where he has a 1-goal rating. That he has any rating at all, he attributes to the fact that he pays a pretty big club bill, end quote.
Reads like his bio on a dating app.
I know, right? I was so shocked when I was reading through the whole article just to find this very
Need to get some air. I need to get a little warm
just how
here.
he like plays with his hair and what a doting father he is and a hardworking guy. Yeah.
He also loves long walks on the beach.
Yeah, that's all it's missing.
Well, my first honorable mention is the Mickey Mouse Ingersoll Waterbury watch box. Since the famous Mickey Mouse watch isn't red, the box is the next best thing. The Mickey Mouse watch, of which the museum is currently displaying 6, along with 3 clocks, is an example of phenomenal merchandising success. Arguably the most popular Mickey item ever, sales from this watch are also credited with saving a company. In the early 1930s, the Ingersoll Waterbury Company was close to bankruptcy when it was given the license to manufacture watches with the famous mouse on the face. According to Bob Thomas in Walt Disney An American Original, quote, within weeks, demand for the watches caused the company to raise the number of employees at its Waterbury, Connecticut plant from 300 to 3,000. 2.5 million Mickey Mouse watches were sold within 2 years, end quote. Not long after, the popular watch with Mickey's hands pointing out the time was chosen by officials at the 1939 New York World's Fair to be buried in the official time capsule. Ingersoll Waterbury is still around today. We know them as Timex.
Great pick. I love this is why I love our honorable mentions, by picking the box and not necessarily the watch. So very creative. My next honorable mention is the Carousel of Progress diorama that we have on display. Now, the display features a large striped red, orange, and white couch the mom sits on and a red armchair that the father is sitting on, very kind of mid-century modern design. This display is a replica that was made by Walt Disney Imagineering for the Walt Disney Family Museum, and it's actually based on original drawings. This display represents the last scene of the original attraction, a depiction of the future. Luckily, decorating for the holidays was still what families in the future would be doing, because this diorama is decorated for Christmas with wrapped gifts, a small tree, and even a set of Donald's nephews as a toy.
Well, and that's the perfect holiday tie-in, because if you experience Carousel of Progress at Magic Kingdom in Florida, you'll see that the final scene, even though it's been updated, it's still Christmas.
Yes.
Well, with my next honorable mention, I'll stay in the parks. My next honorable mention is the miniature red turn of the century car on display among Walt's vast collection of miniatures. These may have influenced the look of the vehicles that iconically coast up and down Main Street, USA. And this pick also allows me to shoehorn in a Zoolander reference. Quote, "What are these? Cars for ants? They need to be at least 3 times bigger than this."
I love that, Chris. What a great pick. I also love these little cars. Yeah, they look like cars for ants. Well, for my last honorable mention, I'm going with a cell of Donald Duck on display wearing a red bathing suit for the short beach picnic. Now, when you think of red, you usually think of Mickey Mouse, so I'm glad Chris had a pick depicting the Mickey Mouse Club. And that's why it's kind of an unexpected pick, picking Donald, therefore why I picked it as an honorable mention. Now, if you haven't seen this short, it's a Donald Duck cartoon that was released in 1939. Donald and Pluto are at the beach, and Donald teases Pluto with an inflatable rubber horse toy. Speaking of ants, Donald gets a taste of his own medicine with an ant colony carrying away his picnic food.
Wonderful. December 2023, the Ant episode.
Yeah.
Well, for my last honorable mention, I'm going with the can of Hormel Chili on display next to the list of Walt's favorite foods. It's a display piece and not really an artifact, hence the honorable mention, but thought it would be a fun way to tie together red things that meant a lot to Walt. The Walt Disney diet: chili, Jell-O, and Scotch mists. In moderation, please drink responsibly.
Well, what a great pick. I love anytime we get to talk about Walt's eating habits. What a great way to end the year, Chris. So thank you so much for this wonderful round of Collections Clash.
And what a great year of Collections Clashes, Brie. You're always a very worthy adversary. Well, visit our Instagram stories today, December 20th, to vote on your favorite objects, or email us at podcast@wdfmuseum.org to cast your votes. Remember, you could be the difference in one of us winning or losing. So definitely get on the phone and vote.
Well, thank you for tuning in to WDFM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all social channels at WDF Museum for all the latest updates.
Well, Brie, hopefully you're ready for the new year. Happy holidays and keep moving forward.
Bye.
Bye.